proving just how cyclical the nature of the cultural zeitgeist is. The 80s aesthetic has been making a bit of a comeback, thanks to series like Stranger Things and a number of modern horror movies set in the 80s. There's a sort of nostalgia attached to this era, I guess, as at least as far as media and the aesthetic of it go. Um, what I remember, however, about growing up in the 80s. So I was born in 1984. Um, or maybe not so much the 80s, but definitely the early 90s. One thing that I remember very distinctly about this era, certainly here in South Africa, is the satanic panic. If you're not familiar, the satanic panic was a moral panic that swept through. Well, it was big in America, but it definitely had a foothold here in good old South Africa, and it was sort of predicated on the fact that there was, I guess, satanic messages subliminally planted in an assortment of um, content, from music to games. I'm talking about things like Dungeons and Dragons. I guess later on, maybe Pokemon is something I've heard. You might have heard the term backwards masking, which supposedly happens if you play a song backwards. Which I don't know how the fuck you did that. Not back in the 80s and 90s, and there would be a sort of satanic leaning message embedded in this track played in reverse. But it was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere. It was so prominent, in fact, that South Africa established an occult crimes unit. Now, I want to go on record as saying that I thought, and I think, sorry, not I thought, I still think that all of this was patently fucking ridiculous. Um, I think, it was a matter of, if you look hard enough for the devil, you're bound to find him somewhere, right? Um, but it was really stupid, but it represents such a notable epoch in my life. Now, I'm very fortunate in that, um my parents didn't they were not influenced by the satanic panic, really, especially not my dad, given the fact that he wasn't religious in the first place. So, shit like that didn't bother him. In fact, the darker the subject matter, the more he seemed to enjoy it, and I obviously inherited that from him, and I'm very grateful for that. It was yeah, it was a big thing. Like I said, big enough for the South African Police Service to establish an occult crimes unit. I think it was headed by a guy called Dr. Kobus Jonker. I'm speaking under correction. I think he has since retired, but I did see him pop up in some docu-series recently to spout off about these things. Yeah, I when I think back to my upbringing, it was pervasive. Certainly, in school, I remember, in fact, this very Dr. Kobus Jonker coming to my primary school. I think it was primary school, might have been early high school, and talking about the dangers, the hidden dangers of the media and the content that we consume. And even back then, I thought that it was incredibly silly and looking back at it now, I that view is only reinforced because it's it still pops up once in a while. Someone will say, the logo for Monster Energy drink represents 666 or whatever, and I think to myself, people have too much fucking time on their hands, first of all, and second of all, what would the end game be here? For I mean, the vast majority of consumers are not going to know uh, in the first place that there is this satanic connotation to a fucking logo. So what what would it achieve ultimately? So yeah, I think back and I can just laugh about it because it's I remember a talk being given while I was in school during assembly, which would have probably been on a Monday morning. Um, about this person was warning us against things like yoga and Reiki and other sort of Eastern practices because they were deemed, not Christian. And what does it matter? What does it matter if something isn't aligned with a particular religion? I mean, in some instances, I can imagine that it matters, but um, I just thought it was really, really stupid, and yeah. So watching all these movies now, with their neon lighting and their 80s fashion and all that, I can't help but think that that's not what I remember about growing up in that era. I remember just how fucking silly the world went for the probably a decade. I don't actually know how long uh the height of the satanic panic was. I just know that it was incredibly funny to behold. Um used to go I used to accompany my dad to the library as a kid. I don't know if those still exist. I certainly hope so, because those are some of my fondest memories, going with my dad to the library and taking out this book on, like, and it was really just from an, I guess, anthropological perspective, on my part, or just for the sake of amusement. Um, it was this whole book in Afrikaans. It was an Afrikaans book that sort of catalogued all these things one needs to look out for, including the peace sign, or a yin yang, or whatever the case may be. Anything that isn't completely aligned with Western Christianity was deemed to be evil and diabolical, and it was really, really fucking dumb. And I'm glad that the world sort of got over that and decided, hey, maybe there are bigger issues to address in society than the possibility of there being, quote unquote, satanic messages in the media that we consume. And a lot of the media I consume contains overt satanic references, and that's cool, because that's just the sort of content that I enjoy. I don't. I mean, I'm not gonna extrapolate or explore why that might be, but those are the facts. So yeah, I just thought I'd ramble on a bit about the sheer stupidness and ridiculousness of the satanic panic when I was growing up, and I hope you guys are all having a great day.